Futures on the US stock indexes are growing in anticipation of the Fed's policy update. The US dollar is extending weakness against a basket of 6 major currencies as mass vaccination in the United States is underway. Investors abandon safe haven assets amid hopes for a global economic recovery. At the same time, the greenback is holding the upper hand against the Canadian dollar. Today, investors await the Fed's policy decisions to sum up the two-day policy meeting. The Fed's policymakers are expected to keep the federal funds rate at the same record low of about zero. This decision will cement risk sentiment, so futures on the benchmark US stock indexes are carrying on with a rally. The Dow Jones rose 0.23%, futures on the Nasdaq are 0.22% up. Likewise, the S&P 500 grew 0.31%. On Monday, the Dow Jones hit a fresh historic high. Yesterday, the Nasdaq also conquered a historic peak. The reason behind such a robust rally is a statement from Apple. The company unveiled its plans to expand manufacturing of iPhones in the coming 2021. Inspired by such plans, investors rushed to buy stocks of the high-tech giant. The S&P 500 is also on the way to its historic highs. If mass vaccination is disrupted by some troubles like side effect of problems with the logistic, this is sure to sap market optimism. Nevertheless, even despite some negatives, analysts still foresee a confident economic recovery in 2021. On Monday, the US authorities launched mass vaccination with the use of jabs by Pfizer and BioNTech. The second pandemic wave is stalling a revival of the ailing US economy as lawmakers have not provided fiscal stimulus yet. Oddly enough, market participants seem to neglect such factors. Investors are poised for risky assets on the back of the vaccination campaign. And the growing appetite for risk, the US dollar is losing ground versus major currencies. Its index shot 0.23%, trading at 90.23. The USD CAD pair, on the contrary, reversed upwards. The pair climbed 0.51% to trade at near 1.2759. Today, the Federal Open Market Committee is due to unveil its policy decisions. The policymakers are likely to keep the key overnight interest rate pinned near zero and signal it will stay there for a long term. Analysts also expect a new guidance on how long the Fed will keep up its massive bond buying program. It means that the market will be provided with unlimited dollar liquidity. Today, the report of major importance is US retail sales for November. Experts project retail sales to decline 0.3% in months, following a 0.3% climb in October. That's all for today. We keep monitoring the financial market situation. Subscribe to our channel and see you tomorrow.